Welcome to the Messy City Podcast, where we talk with the people who design, plan, build, develop, or even just think about how to create beautiful, successful, and humane cities and towns. Let's learn from each other and create places we truly care about. Welcome back to the Messy City Podcast. This is Kevin Klinkenberg. Always fun for me to have a guest in studio, even though the Riverside software does allow me to do some good interviews with people anywhere. It's always more fun in person. And today I've got a guy who might have the biggest social media following of anybody I've ever talked to. And I'm really excited to have him here because he's just got a great story. And I've come to meet him the last couple of years here in Kansas City. But got Johnny Youssef here with me. Thanks, Johnny, for joining.
I'm excited to have this happening. Let's do it.
Yeah. So I always tell people one of the cool things, like selfishly, one of the cool things about having a podcast is it allows me an opportunity to get to know people better and just, in a deeper way than what I otherwise knew. In fact, I have friends that I've known for 20, 30 years. I get them on the podcast and I'm like, I had no idea about that at all. It's fascinating, but we know each other a little, but not a lot. And I thought, let's start a little bit by your backstory. I know you've got a very interesting backstory. So like maybe the time period before you came to Kansas City.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I got to start my podcast because I have questions for you too. So you're going to get to know a lot more about me, and I know still a little about you. But yeah, so little bit about me. So grew up in Cairo, Egypt, and moved to the United States at the age of 15, just a few months actually before September 11th. So it was an interesting time. Moved for high school here. My parents got their green cards, and it was just, at first they didn't want to move. So we would actually come and visit every year so we don't lose the green cards. You have to come and visit or you lose it. But
what prompted the desire to move in the first place?
Yeah, so my grandparents lived here, uncles and aunts, and they applied for us kind of like just in case you may need it. And my parents were like, we're not planning to move. So I think they applied for our turn to come here legally when I was born. So it took 15 years.
Wow.
So yeah, to come legally, it's a 15-year process. But obviously depends on dynamics too, if it's father versus sister and all that. But anyway, so we had it, and it would come every year. I think we got it in 1999. So it'd come, do Disney World and do all the fun American stuff, and then go back. And but then, yeah, my parents' economy was collapsing in Egypt. A lot of discrimination for minorities, which the minorities there are Christian. So just not having a Muslim name in itself can cause inequality, economy, and then also like just our future. They just realized like the college degree there is not going to do much. It's actually crazy. I went to visit Egypt a couple of years ago, and every Uber driver, I'd ask them, what's your degree on? And I had surgeons, I had doctors, engineers. They are surgeons in the morning and they are Uber at night. And they are like, yeah, we make more money from Ubering. So just to tell you where things are at. So we moved in 2001, July 2001, and to the East Coast. My uncles, aunts, grandparents lived in Virginia, so I moved to Richmond, Virginia, and did high school there, college, loved it. Moved to Kansas City in 2009. So right after college, I worked for a news station, so I had a journalism degree. So I love storytelling.
Okay.
And I think actually looking back at my life now, it's interesting because it's like, how did you get into rehabbing properties, historic properties, and how did you get into storytelling? And I would say, growing up in Cairo, some of the most beautiful architectural you'd ever see. You wouldn't know that, but we had the British colonization there, so you have a lot of beautiful European. We also have a lot of French architecture there. So you have, Egypt in the 30s, 40s, and 50s was one of the most beautiful cities in the world. So you have beautiful architecture from different cultures, kind of mixed, and then of course the Middle Eastern culture. And so I always appreciate architecture, but I didn't know much about architecture. I just lived in a beautiful, old, dusty but beautiful building city that's full of messy city,
Yeah.
full of beautiful buildings. But then also Richmond, Virginia. Richmond
Oh,
has beautiful,
gorgeous.
some of the
Yeah.
oldest buildings
Yeah.
and churches. And when I went to Virginia Commonwealth University, VCU, it's downtown Richmond. So I lived in a very old townhouse, but they're all beautiful. They block away from where they filmed the movie Lincoln, so you
Mm,
can kind of, they shut down our streets during that movie to do it. So I think I grew up appreciating historic buildings, and then. When I moved to Kansas City, and I loved storytelling, so I got my journalism degree, but didn't
mm,
do anything with it. I was working for a news station. I wanted to be a news reporter. Then moved to Kansas City for an internship, and unrelated to journalism. And I was just planning to be here for 6 months for the internship. It was also 2009 when the economy just
mm.
collapsed. There were
Yeah.
no jobs. So I was working for a news station, and I created my tape to be a reporter. And they're like, hey, look, like, we like you. You're going to be a reporter if you want to, but it may take 4 or 5 years because, also that was also during the time where local TV stations, the internet was just really
Mm.
hitting them hard. So they're like, we're downgrading because of how the technology is going online. It was when Facebook was newer. Wow, I sound really old. Um, but then also on top of that, the economy was bad. So
Yeah.
I just knew that I'm not going to be getting a job as a reporter anytime soon. So moved to Kansas City and worked and planning to move back, get my master's degree in journalism. Um, and I just saw the real estate market here. And I remember just living here and just out of curiosity, like everyone, I'd go to Zillow and see how much things are selling. And my neighborhood, I lived in South Kansas City, houses were selling for $25,000 left and right.
Mm.
And you go in, and I didn't know anything about real. Well, I knew a little bit. My dad ended up buying a couple of rentals in Kansas City, and in Richmond, and I very casually managed them, even though I didn't want to. But he didn't know what he's doing, and I was like, "Get a management company." He's like, "No, they're gonna take 10%." I'm like, you're embarrassing me, dad. Like, I have my friends renting from you. We gotta do something about that right by campus. So I started unintentionally managing some
Huh.
properties, but that kind of taught me a little bit about real estate. So long story short, when I was here during the internship, I'm seeing $25,000 houses, and I walk in and I'm like, these ranches will rent for $800 and they don't need much. I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I just did the math. I was like, in 3 years I'll make my money back. What is this?
Mhm.
So I decided to stick around. The idea was like, I'm just gonna stay for a year, maybe buy me a property, and then move back. And then I got my real estate license, and then started just buying one property after another, mostly South Kansas City, Grandview area. So not much architectural
Yeah.
beauty. It was just the numbers made sense. And then I started having investors. I was the new guy in the real estate company. So like all these realtors that are already upset at the bad economy, they're like, what are we selling? People are calling us for $70,000 houses. So whenever they get some client wanting to buy $30,000 house, they send it to Johnny. Just throw Johnny the $300 commission checks.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that because that got me into learning about investment. And anyway, so that's how I got here.
Man, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So at how many houses did you start buying then, and like what over what time period are we talking about?
Yeah. So I mean, it was easy, right? Because literally just they were cheap.
Yeah.
So I bought my house. I bought the very first one I actually bought was a duplex. I lived on,
Okay.
and today is crazy. I just came back from selling it.
Really?
So the first house I ever bought, I just came back from selling it just 30 minutes ago.
Wow.
So yeah. But I bought it, $77,000 duplex, two sides. I lived on one side, started renting, finishing them, and then had 10 tenants, five on each side. And then from there, I found out what my bank was like. You can get an equity line of credit. So a year later, I pulled $40,000, bought another house, another house in Grandview for $40,000, and then I started doing that. And I would say over time, it got to 30 properties, about 40
Wow.
doors.
Wow.
Yep, 40
Okay.
doors, and then in the process, though, I can see the evolution of, I loved renting. So when I lived with other guys, I loved it because I felt like I'm giving guys that don't care about anything a better lifestyle. Like they were just everyone was just living in a terrible situation, and I'm just like painting the houses, putting new cabinets, and then I started like offering furnished option, and
Hmm.
so making a little bit more income. But in the process, I started enjoying the idea of giving people a nice experience and taking it just from being a landlord. And I've seen a lot of some landlords like in that area.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, I just would never believe in that. I never want that. So I started enjoying how can I make it better? How can I make it nicer? And in the process, I love the idea of hospitality experience. And that's where also I started hearing about Airbnbs. And then I was like, maybe I should buy a short-term rental and try it. And then I really enjoyed that. And that kind of was more of an evolution over time where I was like, I want a bigger and nicer Airbnb too. What if we have a boutique hotel slash wedding venue? So it kind of came over time. And again, it was I started coming north and buying up north, Midtown, specifically actually,
Yeah.
because I would just see affordable houses. The first house was on Campbell and 44th, and it was $40,000 right there in
Wow.
Hyde Park, and it was huge, but
What
it needed so
what
much work.
condition must have
Oh,
that
it was
been?
completely gutted.
Yeah.
It was like an eightplex. It was running illegally as an eightplex,
Wow.
according to neighbors, since the 70s, so
Yeah.
70s, 80s, 90s, and then the city started saying, "Hey, this is Hyde Park. We can't do that." But I think I want to say there were five investors that bought it, sold it, bought it, sold it. So when it was my turn, they actually made me sign the city that I have like a year to do it, and I have to try to um, sell it for a family. And no, 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 yeah, no, I had minimum of 90 days that I have to list it and try to sell it for a family. And if I can't sell it, then I can rent it, which I found out that that was illegal for the
Yeah, I
city
was
to
gonna
do.
say that's
They
not.
were, yeah,
Yeah.
but they had a lot of pressure. They apologized. They're like, we weren't supposed to do that. So, but they had a lot of pressure from Hyde Park. We don't want just a bunch of renters, which I get. So I tried to sell it for 200,000. No one would buy it. It was 4,500 square feet, but
Oh my
again, it
god.
was 2011 in Hyde Park,
Oh.
completely remodeled, 6 bedrooms, huge kitchen, living room. So I rented it, and oh no, I had it as a short-term rental when it was allowed, and that was great. And then eventually I just leased it long-term leases.
So if we could take a step back to when you're starting the process and you're building up to having 30 or so houses. I think it's probably easy for people to understand like how they might finance buying one property, especially a really cheap one,
Sure.
like that. If either you can do it with cash or friends and family help with the cash or with a very simple, inexpensive loan. What talk about how you began to finance having multiple properties like that and manage multiple
Sure,
properties?
sure. So it's the Burr method, which a lot of people know it. I didn't know what it is until
Yeah.
I heard it. I was like, oh, I guess I've been doing that for years. But it's you buy, that's B, and then R is for you renovate. And then after you renovate, you rent. And then from rent, you refinance. And then from refinance, you repeat. So that's how I did it. Again, I stumbled on it, didn't know what I was doing. So my house, I bought it, I renovated it, and it took a while because I didn't have the money. So I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I just need a living room and 2 bedrooms for me and one roommate to help me with mortgage. And then it's like, okay, let's finish the basement now. All right, now I'm gonna start tackling the next side. So that's how I did it. Just it took me 2 years for something that could have probably took 90 days, but I
Right.
just had to do it in pieces. So I bought, I renovated, I rented, I refinanced. When I say I refinanced, I just went to the bank and they told me get a line of credit. So they had an appraiser and they're like, oh yeah, it's not worth 77 anymore. And I can't remember at the time, but they're like, it's worth 150,000
Hmm.
because of the improvements he did. So they gave me 80% of that difference, which was 40,000. So that's when I went,
Bought
used
the
that,
next property.
bought the next property.
Right.
And I could have actually used it as a down payment, went to a bank and saying, look, this is 20-25%. I want to buy something bigger. And here's the rent income I'm expecting. But
Hmm.
at the time, I just bought something, Grandview, that needed some work and immediately was mostly cosmetic, did it. Then again, rented it out, went back to the bank. The bank came and said, yeah, and it was a foreclosure, so it was a great price.
Hmm.
They said, yeah, I can't remember, but I'm gonna guess it was around like 100,000, 120. So they basically gave me the money back to do it again.
Yeah.
So it's harder now. It's not as easy,
Yeah.
but we also have opportunities now we didn't have back then. So we can talk about that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So I guess what I was going to ask, so were you living kind of in the one property the whole time, or did you move from property to
I
property a
lived in
little bit?
that property for 5 years. Yeah,
Okay.
because
All right.
because what I did is I bought the duplex next to it, then next to it, and then before I
Uh,
knew it, I owned 5 duplexes next to each
okay.
other.
All right.
So I decided I'm gonna live there. I had my little mailbox with a key, so everyone can drop the checks there.
Good.
I had my little office in there, so I did that. But eventually, I moved out, and then I leased it, and then I moved to a house in West Plaza, and then recently we just moved out and we leased it. So
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
and that's
And
a smart hack, by the way. Like,
yeah.
whether you are, so I actually have a couple that I probably sold. How I've worked with them for the past, I want to say 15 years, and every 2 years they call me saying, "Hey, are you ready to sell our house? We're buying a new house." And here's why they do it: is because there's no capital gains if it's your private residence and you live in it for 2 years.
Right.
So they buy a house, they fix it up, they live in it for 2 plus years. Then they're ready for something bigger, nicer, new location. So they sell it. Let's say they profit 300,000 or whatever. I mean, I don't know how much they profited.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay taxes. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's $500,000 limit. So they don't pay capital
Right.
gain taxes on
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a tremendous hack, and like especially I think for young people, it's a super smart way to go if you don't mind moving around a little bit.
I had a
Every
guy
couple
on
of
social
years.
media that follows me. He's like 21-year-old. I think he's the first person to buy through me through social media. I don't
Huh.
really put myself out there, so I need to. But if you're looking for a house, I'm right here. But he's 21. He goes to UMKC and he has a little business, saved some money. And he's like, "Hey, I want to buy a house. I'm gonna fix it up. I'm gonna live in it in 2 years." He knew the hack, and that's one of the things. When I say we have things right now that we didn't have back then. We didn't have this knowledge. We didn't have the access to all that information,
Yeah.
YouTube, ChatGPT. So he said he sat, did some research, and realized that he can easily do that. So I sold it to him, and that was maybe 6 months ago. In a year and a half, he's going to be calling me, buying something better, nicer, renting this one out, and yeah, or if he chooses to sell it, making profit, not paying taxes on it.
Yeah. I think there's also something really interesting about that story, your story, in that you're starting in like the not sexy part of town, right?
Oh yeah, oh
You
yeah.
know,
I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that, it's sometimes I've run across a lot of people who immediately want to jump into like working in like the more expensive, nicer part of town, beautiful buildings, et cetera. But, what you describe really is looking for inexpensive properties and actually being the non slumlord in that
Mm-hmm.
area.
Mm-hmm.
And which I would imagine means that in that area, that got you better tenants than on average than other folks.
Totally, because you're charging more. Yeah, so that's a great point. It's funny because I bought also some properties. I'm not gonna say the name of the neighborhood because maybe I'm not. I'm a realtor. I'm not
Yeah.
supposed to say what's a great area, what's not. But I bought some properties in a well-known neighborhood that I mean, houses were selling left and right for $18,000,
Uh,
and I was scared of being a slumlord because you drive around and you're like, oh no, that's not who I am.
right.
And it's funny because at the time everyone said, "Hey, sure, your cash flow is going to be so much better, right? Because you the rent you're making, I was renting it for $700, bought it for I don't know 17,000. Versus if you at this, during the same time, even if I would have afforded something similar, let's say in the plaza, it wouldn't have been 17,000. It would have been 70,000. But instead of $700 in rent, I would have made 1,000. So it made so much more sense to buy in those areas. But I was scared because I was told, yeah, but the plaza is gonna appraise really well. This area is
Yeah.
not, and that's not true because that 17,000 worth 170 right now. So if you
Mm,
look at the percentage, it actually appraised way more because
yeah.
investors that are looking, you just can't get anything cheaper. So I would say you can you can get something in what they call class D class. It has more challenges, but it also has more rewards. So the risk, I had a Craigslist scam where someone put a picture of one of my houses when it was vacant,
Hmm.
and pretended to be the landlord. They paid him online. He told them break the lockbox on the door. I'm out of town, so just break the
Oh,
lockbox until I come back. And I've had guys living there for 3 months. I mean, that was a loss, right? And they completely destroyed the place. But when I look at it for 10 years, 3 months is nothing compared to the returns I got.
yeah.
So you just have to be more attentive. You have to be more picky about your tenants. So I have pretty strict guidelines. But you'll have really good people. Just because someone doesn't have the money doesn't mean that they're bad. There are people that are good, that hard workers.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's just a young person ready to get out of home and they're building their lives, or someone that's gone through something. Like I've had people that have gone through foreclosure because
Mm.
they lived a lifestyle they couldn't afford. And I literally had a couple that lived in Overland Park, bought a house they couldn't afford before the crash. And
Wow.
they were actually so diligent on, we're going to live anywhere, but we're going to be really good about our money so that we don't repeat that. So
Yeah.
you'll have great tenants. If you just have to be very diligent, very careful, have rules in place, and it definitely paid off.
Yeah. That's great. What about from a management standpoint? What was that like going from just like having a duplex to all of a sudden you've got like 20, 30
Oh
places you're trying to
man,
rent?
yeah, management, it's my weakness. Some people love it, some people don't. And I've tried everything. I've hired property management companies actually twice, and I've done self management. Right now, I found the sweet spot, and I'll share about that. But I would say, um, definitely, they call it passive income. It's not passive income. It's semi passive, right?
Yeah.
Because
Right.
it's making you money when you're asleep. But like my dad, when he started real estate, when he started buying properties, every time the sink is has having issues, stuff, he'd just be in a bad mood and, oh, I can't, oh my gosh, and I'm like, so I would just tell people, and that's what I learned. You have to be prepared. It's not fully passive, right? So if you just give yourself margin, like every week, for every property, I don't know, I'm gonna give myself an hour,
Yeah.
So, and usually you don't need to spend that hour, but you just plan on every month there's gonna be side time for that, and that helped me just have a better attitude.
Hmm.
I did try to get the management companies because they give you all the promises in the world. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be so free and I'm gonna get many more properties because I'll have my time back. But what I learned is most properties, and this is not to hate at all because I know some people like their properties, they just will never care about your property as much as you do. And you don't blame them because, like, one of the property management that managed for me, they had 6,000 properties.
Oh my God.
So, I get busy. And some people are really diligent. They're on top of it with their property management. But I wasn't because I'm like, oh, another property management is managing. So I remember one time they just forgot to lease a property of mine for 6 months. So the numbers were just coming and they're just not great. I'm like, oh, well, we had this eviction repair. And then I was like, wait a second, the spreadsheet is missing one of my properties. And I'm like, hey guys, like, oh, we're so sorry. We just changed software and forgot to add it. Right.
Oh my
So,
God.
so 6 months, no one was noticing, but the blame is on me because, so my point is this: if you absolutely need a property management, um, just be on top of it. Look at the spreadsheets. Make sure nothing is missed. Drive around every once in a while. If you can manage, especially if you don't have any properties, I would say for the first 10 properties, someone gave me that advice and I think it's really good. He said for the first 10 properties, as long as they're local, you should not get them managed by someone else. You'll learn so much. And even if you eventually get them managed by someone else, you will learn so much about what should your policies be.
Mm.
Like, for example, me self-managing, I learned do not put fans in every room. Like, it's just they break, they get dirty, and then you have to fix them. And they have 5 bulbs, and people want new bulbs. Just put the simple, and you can still be a good landlord while simplifying things. You know, um, do not put carpet in bedrooms. It's guaranteed every 2 years you're replacing the carpet with LVP. And there's now, especially back then, LVP was like kind of low quality
Hmm.
laminate.
Hmm.
Now there's great products that
Right.
you see in $1 million house. So it will teach you so much about how you want things to run. Should you do 2 year leases? Should you do 1 year leases? Should you do rent increases every year, or should you not do that? If you have a good tenant, how much should you do for a deposit? Is 1 month enough? So I would say do it yourself for a while, and once you get really busy, then you can go to a property management and actually tell them what you expect. But the third option, and that's the sweet spot that I actually recommend, find someone that has worked for property management companies that want some side hustle.
Mm.
And that I feel like is the sweet spot because, so I have one right now. She's tremendous. She has kids. She doesn't want to work full time. But she's more than happy to manage 30 properties. For her, that's nothing compared to when she was working for a management company with a portfolio of 400 properties. 30 is
Right.
like easy peasy for her.
Right.
Right. And she goes when it's good for her, when kids are at school. She works on them when she needs to. She understands every once in a while there's going to be an emergency and she's going to need to step away. But for 30 properties, that happens once or twice a year, and she's totally happy to do it.
Mm.
She's a way lower than charging than a property manager charge. She charges me hourly. I have a bonus structure to motivate her to make sure things are rented. vacancies are taken care of, evictions are being
Hmm.
handled quickly. So I would say that's a sweet spot if you can find someone trusted.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Often had this little beef because I remember as being a renter, I had so many really bad property management
Hmm.
companies, you know,
Hmm.
where their service was atrocious. And the idea, you can tell me if this you think this is crazy or not, and I won't be offended. It's fine. But I had this idea that we should to go find companies that really obviously train their workers really well on customer service. So, like stereotypically, you might say like Starbucks, Chick-fil-A, some better places that really train people, and just hire one of those people away from them
Yeah.
and be your property manager.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Obviously, if they're working full time for a company like that,
Right?
they're going to expect, a
Yeah.
good salary. But someone like that, or again, for some reason, what I found the last three I had were moms that have done it. They
Yeah.
quit because they just don't have time with kids to be
That's
full
great.
time. But if you tell them, I'll put a printer in your office, you do everything online. I'll just have a call with you once a week. They're like, this is exactly what we want. We're having the side income
Yeah.
and we're having our freedom. So definitely good advice.
Yeah. That's
Great
brilliant.
advice. Yeah.
That's brilliant. So
And
they.
and and not to say anything about about property management, but I actually recently looked at a property manager that I really like here in KC.
Uh-huh.
And I actually rented from them. So for a while, I rented in Midtown before I bought my house. I was
Mhm.
done living in that duplex with 10 guys, five on each side. And everyone at that point, everyone knows the landlords there. I have people knocking, hey,
Yeah.
Johnny, can you come check this? So I was like, I need to get out. But before buying my house here in West Plaza, I rented because I was like, I want to see how they're doing it. And they own a bunch of properties on Armour, and they're great. And I had a great experience. I took a
Mm.
lot of notes of how they handle things. I mean, even the dress codes of their
Hmm.
employees, their responsiveness, their contract saved me probably a couple of grands paying an attorney because I took some ideas from them. That was before
Hmm.
ChatGPT. So I was like,
That's
how do
great.
you build a good? So I love their policies, but you look at reviews and they're still not good. And the reason is because I feel for property management because their job is to make you, their client, happy,
Right.
but their job is also to make money from you,
Yeah.
and also their job is their actual client that they're working with day to day is the tenant. So they have three people at war.
Yeah.
So if they're really good at protecting your assets, they're gonna have bad reviews because they're not willing to repair things or not charge tenants for things they've done. If they want to make more profit, they're gonna start upsetting landlords because they're nickeling and diming everything and
Yeah.
raising their costs. So I actually owned the property management for a couple of years, and it was, thank God for me, COVID was like time to shut it down, and I'm so grateful. So
Yeah.
I have a lot of compassion for them.
Yeah. And, and like where most tenants are really fine and not a problem, there is a percentage that is incredibly difficult
Yep.
and sometimes even destructive. And so you're going to have those people and then they're going to crap on you
Yep.
when you have to rein them in.
100%.
So,
Yep.
talk a little bit then about the difference between when you started doing some like short-term rentals, the difference between like running those properties versus the long-term.
Yeah. Yeah, there are some big differences. So I love hospitality, and that's why we did short-term rentals. And the best way to describe it's a lot more fun for me, but operations is a lot more difficult. So I would say one of the biggest challenges is that, let's say you're a long-term renter and your microwave breaks. Okay, it's Monday. We're busy this week, but we ordered the microwave and it's coming in a week, so we're gonna install it in 10 days. Most tenants, oh, thank you very much. Whatever, worst case, you're like, we'll drop off a microwave for you. That's fine, temporary one. Not with Airbnb. Airbnb is like, hey, we're paying $400 for tonight. We need a microwave for in the next hour.
Yeah.
Now, microwave is a bad example, but it's the fridge, it's the oven, it's the you know just whatever it is. It's, I mean, I've had one recently. I have someone managing with me, but she wasn't available, so they call me. They're like, hey, the smoke detector is starting to make that you
Mm,
know
that beeping noise.
beeping
Yeah,
noise.
sure.
It's 10 o'clock. I'm like, can you guys close the door? And they're like, yeah, we can hear it, but we just don't feel safe with the beeping noise. What if a fire happens? I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna push back. I drove to change the battery. With long term, you have a lot more cushion for that. So that's the biggest challenge. Is if you're gonna do short term, you have to be like really aware that if you're out of town or if you're doing it long distance, someone local that you can trust that can be
Mm.
inconvenienced, can be quick. So that's the biggest thing. The second thing, of course, is people are expecting a lot more from you. So it's not just slapping
Yeah.
an old bed and calling it a day. Like the design, you want to give people an experience where they feel at the end of the day, I'm glad we did this, not a hotel. So and that's a high standard, right? You walk into a hotel,
Mhm.
there's the coffee, there's the music in the background, there's the elevator. There's just like the whole thing. You feel like
Mhm.
you're a guest at somewhere fancy. Even if you're at Holiday Inn Express, it just
Yeah.
feels nice. You have breakfast sometimes. You have a little fountain for no reason in the middle of the hotel just to look nice. So you have to think like, how do I give people experience? So and then obviously the standard uh of management. For example, if you have a tenant for a year or two, they're not going to call you because they have chipping paint, or because they scratch the wood or whatever, and they're not going to call you for that. In fact, you wait for it and then you can charge them for it. We have to repaint because of all the dents in the
Mm.
paint.
Mm.
But with Airbnbs, like recently I had one, had great reviews, doing really well. But uh, it's so busy during the summer. So May, June, July, August, September, great reviews. July, we're starting to get 4 stars, 3 stars. We're like, what's going on? People are sending us the same pictures. Paint is peeling. The handles around the doors are dirty because so many people are using
Mm.
it. So now we have to go every other month and we have to touch up paint. So it's a lot more management, a lot more maintenance.
Mm.
But for me, the income is about double. So it's like, if a property rents for 2,000, I expect $4,000 in income. So it's double what rents does. And for me, it's just fun to just I love the stories I get. Like,
Mhm.
we've had so many, like, we're here for Taylor Swift, we're here for the Chiefs, my memorial services, families are reuniting. Christmas is always fun to you get
Mm.
so many stories, like it's grandma's whatever birthday and we're here
Mm.
together for Christmas with her. So I love that part. I
Yeah.
love hospitality, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So next step for you was you started to fall in love with these historic properties again and decided to take some on.
Yeah, man, that journey was the hardest journey for me. But I think it's the most rewarding. We'll see. I'm excited to see Broadway
We're
just
happy to have you doing them, so we'll see.
I'm glad you
Hopefully
are.
they're working out.
I'm glad you are, because a lot of people are not, and that's, I
Yeah.
think, probably the hardest thing. Yeah. So the journey started actually with that house that I said, the
Yeah.
first house we bought in Midtown. So it's in on Campbell and 44th.
Mhm.
So when I bought it, before I even did any work, I told you the city was like, you have to try to sell it for a family first, and then if you can, then you're allowed to rent it. It was I don't know how much details of the story you want to hear, but it was crazy because I did not know what I was getting into. Because I started getting people complaining that it has vinyl siding, which, by the way, I bought it with vinyl siding, vinyl windows, because so many investors owned it and they stopped working on it. So the neighbors got fed up with how ugly it looked, that they put pressure on the city, get this fixed. So the last owner before me put vinyl siding and put vinyl windows. And
Mm.
from my understanding, the neighbors were happy because it looked awful for a decade. But I come in and people are like, I'm like seeing myself tagged or mentioned in Facebook groups, Hyde Park Facebook groups, like, this guy's awful, he put vinyl. I'm like, guys, I did, and I was new, so I didn't even know, oh, it's historic. I didn't even know historic required something else, and I bought it that way. And then, like, what is he gonna do? We don't want renters in there. So it was a lot of learning experience of the expectation and the standard. But I learned a lot even about, so, like, one of the other projects I did, we just, in my ignorance, I painted the brick white. And a neighbor said, "This is historic," which I didn't know was historic, but it was actually four houses in the neighborhood right by Ward Parkway that was historic, and my house was one of them. So she's like, have them remove the paint. So I learned a lot about code. I also learned about neighbors' expectations, because sometimes some of it is totally reasonable. People want to bring back the beauty of what it was. Some of it is not reasonable because, like, hey guys, this was this way for 20 years. It's not
Right.
there. But I learned a lot about the expectations. I think also, um, there are diamonds in the rough. I find them a lot more rewarding because someone else created something beautiful and you get to bring it back, rather than having to have the brain power and the funding to build something from scratch. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
No, so I mean, when you started getting into doing sort of like the Midtown area and working on
hmm
some of these houses, was then the idea you were thinking sort of like buy them, renovate and sell? Were you looking for more
yeah,
like rental property? What
yeah.
was
The
your
first one
process?
was buy to sell, like I said,
Yeah,
and that one at 200K I couldn't sell. So they're like, we're not gonna break even,
right.
and yet we're gonna lose money. So I rented it. That's when I'll tell you this: a magazine in Kansas City decided to write an article about me. I was part of a church down south. And they wrote an article about me that I intentionally put the price of $200,000 on the property, knowing that no one will buy it because who will buy a house in Hyde Park for 200,000? Again, needless to say, 400 and over 4,000 square foot mansion, basically. But they made this crazy article that I did it because I intentionally have this desire to have my church members move to it, and they're conservative Christians and it's dangerous for the neighborhood.
Oh boy.
And it's amazing the amount of comments. Back then, these articles would have comments. I mean, hundreds of people, get him out of
Oh,
our neighborhood. And I was so confused and just like, what is going on, you know? Um, Never even got a chance to be interviewed. Like the guy called me and said, "Hey Johnny, I'm putting an article about you. If you don't call me shortly, I'm gonna put it," and literally called him an hour and a half later, didn't answer. And the next morning I woke up to that crazy article.
mm,
So so I think that was my big wake up call. But you think I would quit after that because again, I got so much criticism about how ugly my vinyl is that I never placed in the first place. And then that I have some crazy intention of having it as a secret conservative dormitory. But I think I was so dismayed, but I think it also created a backbone that I'm so grateful for, because then another property came, North Hyde Park, and that one I was planning to buy and flip. So bought it, fix it up, was gonna flip it, and then I fell in love with it. So I was like, no, I'm not gonna flip it. I want to keep it. So and that was when short-term rentals were becoming popular. So I put it as a short-term rental. Learned a lot. Thank God, I have really good, gracious neighbors. Where if there was a loud noise or something, they were like, "Hey, Johnny." So started learning about policies and how to avoid that. And
mm,
we have very strict policies. Obviously, I cannot guarantee 100% every neighbor is going to be excellent, but we have really good neighbors and we have really good policies to weed out any bad person. So that was my second one. I stumbled on short-term rentals, did that. And then from there, a fourplex in Midtown that was like a crack house
mm,
on Charlotte and 33rd.
mm.
So fixed it and I kept it as a rental. Um, and then from there, bought another one on Campbell as a rental. That one, another one on North Campbell. So that one is interesting because it's, I want to say, 7,000 square feet,
Wow.
and it was used for decades as an what's the word? Like a caregiving facility for the elders.
Huh.
But you go inside of it. I mean, it looks like the metal beds from like World War II, metal beds, like just raw, peeling walls. It looked like an institution more than a
Wow.
caregiving facility. It's been abandoned for a long time. So I come in and I'm like 7,000 square feet. It's just a block away from all the Mac apartments buildings. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And it was in a huge lot. I mean, double lot with a parking lot. So plenty of parking, like I want to say 9 cars can park in the back. So like we'll turn it into a sixplex, about 900 square feet per unit. That's plenty of space. And then we have parking for everyone, and it's right next to Mac Apartments. And I thought the neighbors are going to be like, thank you so much. This thing was an eyesore for a long time. No, we don't want multifamily in this neighborhood. Get out. And they fought it. It was during COVID. So that
Mm,
was another stumbling block of like, why do neighbors not wanting this? But it actually worked out great because I was like, okay, well, if they're going to keep pushing, I can build on the empty lot, which they tried to fight, but they couldn't because, and it's only one person. It's always one person.
yeah,
But
sure.
what they do is they go to the other neighbors and scare the heck out of them.
Yeah.
So they actually shared with them the same magazine article and stuff like, this guy is going to have these conservative church people coming in and just
Oh,
scare them.
wow.
And he has short-term rentals. He's going to turn it into a hotel. And poor neighbor next door, elderly man, was scared. He's like, "Are you going to turn it into a hotel?" I was like, "No, sir. I have no plans for that." But because I have an empty lot next to it, I started thinking creatively. Okay, so the attorney that was helping me with zoning into sixplex, which again was an underuse compared to what it was used as a
Right.
basically rehab institution, he said, "Hey, you don't even have to go through much to say I'm going to build on this empty lot." They tried to fight it, they couldn't, but it was such a blessing because then I was able to keep a duplex without neighbors' permission because of the size of it. So it's a duplex, and then next door I built a duplex. So which was actually more profitable, more beneficial. So I think the moral of the story is I kind of learned as I went. I learned how to take pushbacks and just pivot. And that really was what prepared me for the next big project, which
Right.
is the wedding venue.
Yeah. So that's which is kind of an interesting deal. Then you work up to this completely different property, an old church
Hmm.
on Broadway on a busy street in the city. And so talk a little bit about what attracted you to that project.
Yeah, so I think what attracted me is the confidence. A couple of things. First of all, I felt by then that I had the confidence because I have now ran, I want to say like 10. I didn't own them all. I managed for friends that own short-term rentals, but I managed 10 short-term rentals, and at some, often we've had them where they're all booked, especially if we have again a
Mm.
game musician in town.
Hmm.
So I felt like, okay, I'm able to manage that many people at a time. um and I also had the backbone of, okay, I can come up with a new idea, and like like having a property as a rental when it was vacant for a long time, or trying to get a sixplex in a property. I can get pushbacks from neighbors, and I know how to respond and how to listen legitimately to any neighbor's response, but be able to weed out what's important, what's not, for the betterment of the city and the neighborhood. Because you have to filter it through those elements, like,
Right.
okay, is it better, like, for these short-term for not short-term rental, for that huge property that I wanted as a sixplex. I was like, okay, it was abandoned for a long time. Is that what's best for the neighborhood? No. Okay, then let's move forward with sixplex. Is it worth the fight? No. Okay, then let's do the duplex. So you learn how to adjust and see what's best. So one thing that prepared me is my experience,
Hmm.
but the second thing is because, again, going back to Richmond, I would drive by that church, Broadway Baptist Church, and it reminded me of home because there was a lot of buildings in Richmond that look similar, and there isn't that
Mhm.
much in Kansas City. I mean, there is, but not as much as when it comes to the details you see on the
Sure.
building.
Yeah.
So I would be like, oh, that reminds me of Richmond. That reminds me of Richmond, where I, went to high school, college. And it was for sale in 2016. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I can buy this, but there's no way I can buy it. It was actually for sale next. It was that building, and Plaza Academy was next door. It
Oh,
was
really?
the whole thing was because, yeah, it was all the church. They actually split it and sold it separately later. So I want to say, I may be incorrect, but about 40,000 square feet for $500,000. It's like, oh my gosh, I wish I can do it. But at the time, I didn't have the confidence and I didn't have the funding to do it. Had a friend that said, I'll go in with you. So we went and toured it. But by then, we just couldn't. So someone else bought it. They split it. They sold half for Plaza Academy. Then they tried to run a church. But with it not having a parking lot, it's a dead deal. I mean, it's just so hard to find a church with congregation now
Mm.
that's gonna just park everywhere and try to figure out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, back in the day when these churches were built, they built as a neighborhood church where
Right.
neighbors would just walk
Exactly.
to it.
Yeah.
I heard this joke that back in the day, like, you move to a house and the nearest church is a Baptist church, but you are Methodist, and you just look at your family and say, I guess we're Baptist,
Yeah.
because you're not gonna walk more than a block when it's negative 10
Yeah.
degrees outside. So
Yeah.
um so I love that church. I saw it sold, and I was hoping that I see an improvement, but every time I drive by 2017, 2018, 2019, it just kept looking worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, oh no, someone bought it and they just realized they cannot do what it needs to bring it back to its old glory. So when it came in 2022, that's when I was like, I need to buy this church. So had the confidence, had the love for it, and then I kind of worked backwards. I was like, well, what do I do with it? So people are usually like, we want to start a wedding venue. Let's look for a building.
Yeah.
I'm like, I love the building. Let's see what we can do with it. So the big option in front of me, I had a friend that owns a couple of out of town coffee shops and restaurants. He's like, you can do this as a huge, nice, fun coffee shop, like Messenger or something. But I just felt like we have a lot of coffee shops, and do we really need that much
Yeah.
space? And I'm like, how can I bring it? What's the most honoring way to honor this building for today's need? That's kind of how I looked at it. And I thought a church would be really difficult again with parking. And we started attending church in Midtown, and they said, "Oh yeah, we looked at that church. We would have totally jumped on it if there was a parking lot." So
Mm,
that kind of confirmed they meet at Plex Pod where there's a big,
yeah. Big parking
parking
lot.
lot.
Yeah.
So it kind of confirmed that's not the best use for today. Okay, what's the next best use? Well, what are they known for? They are known for gathering. And when I looked at pictures online, a bunch of wedding pictures. So, oh my goodness, this would be a great wedding venue. It would honor the past, honor what it was built for a place of gathering. And I think marriage is worship. It's an act of worship. It's a love story. And they had
Mm,
hundreds, if not probably thousands of weddings there. So I was like, okay, that is the best use. Okay, what about the classrooms in the back? So the first thing that came in mind is uh, offices. That's not much of a change of use. People come and
mm.
use them as offices. So I was going to go that direction, and that would have saved me a lot of money and a lot of sprinkler system money. And my ignorance, I didn't know that turning it into a hotel would require much more in expenses when it comes to sprinkler system. But I thought, that's a little bit of change of use, but that would be an incredible experience for people to come, stay, enjoy the city together, and have something unique.
Yeah.
And Midtown has a reputation which I don't love that, oh, it's grungy, it's not safe.
Hmm.
And we want to change that. We have beautiful buildings. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I go to Johnson County, Lee Summit, and all the hip places, and I just think, but they don't have the
Right.
120-year-old, 130-year-old buildings and this street filled with old beautiful houses. So I wanted to bring that to the picture. So that's when I thought, even though offices make the most sense, given that it used to be offices, I think a hotel would be the best way to honor that building and the legacy, and to bring the type of tourists we want in our block. So, and the numbers panned out. So I was like, let's do it.
So how many rooms then are you talking about in the hotel side?
Yeah. So it's a little unique because you have two hotel suites. So each of them have basically two bedrooms. Well, one has two bedrooms, one has three bedrooms. So that's five. But they also have the common area slash living rooms, and I would love to show you sometime.
Mm.
So these have pull-out mattresses. So really, you're looking at 7 bedrooms, quote unquote, and then you have another 1 bedroom on the main floor, so that's 8, and then the honeymoon suite is 9. That comes with a living room 10. So basically, 10 bedrooms.
So there must be a little bit of overlap then with the wedding venue, with the hotel spaces or the
Yeah,
lodging.
so we are not opening it to the public for now. We
Okay.
want to do it. We really want to do it because especially with how we're seeing so much fun businesses coming in, new coffee shops,
Yeah.
and the streetcar. I mean, it's a little further away, but it's still close enough
Right.
that we want to be able to open it when we don't have wedding venues. But we are testing it right now on weddings and
Cool.
brides and grooms and having good experience. And once we get there, probably during the winter when things slow down, we're going to start opening the hotel rooms Monday through Thursdays.
Yeah. So this was a big ambition. I mean, we kind of you went through it a little bit quickly, but this was a big ambitious renovation for you. The church was.
If I knew what I was getting into, I can show you. It's really embarrassing. Maybe I shouldn't say that because people
I've
be like,
seen some of the videos.
we know this guy didn't know what he's talking about. Because if I show you the spreadsheet, I estimated that it's going to cost 700,000 to buy and $700,000 to fix.
Yeah.
No,
So how much to fix?
we are like 4 million. I
Wow.
mean, that's how off I was because I had no idea. I mean,
Yeah.
part of my ignorance is I can't remember who I talked to in the city, which I'm grateful. I can't remember who. That way I can't point finger. And I was like, hey, it used to have weddings. So I talked to the pastor. He passed away in February, but I talked to him. Said, how many weddings, how many people did you fit during weddings? He said, we've had weddings where we have 700 people. He said, we
Wow.
counted sitting. So we took it down to 230 per
Yeah.
wedding max. So I thought surely, oh, and they had a full kitchen with a full commercial oven. So when I talked to someone in the city, said, hey, we're removing the oven. We're just going to be a catering kitchen. So there's no concern about fires or anything like that. And also, we are going to have 230 instead of 700 people. That the capacity was, they have assigned capacity 415 upstairs, 180 downstairs. We're doing 230 for the whole building, like very
Yeah.
low capacity. I thought that someone in the city said, yeah, you're not going to need sprinkler system. So I'm like, oh, great. So actually, after I buy it, we go through the drawing, we go through the zoning change. Oh, that actually triggered. It's now a hotel. People are spending the night, and it's also a wedding event, which is totally different code. You now need a $400,000 sprinkler
Yeah. I was
system.
going to
So
ask you how much that one
yep,
line
yep.
item
I think
cost. Yeah.
yeah, I think the bid ended up being like 360.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So yeah, so it was a lot more. I had to basically borrow against my entire portfolio. So any property that I've worked for 10 years, I'm like, hey, I have equity. I had to go and be like, can you guys lend me money? Can you guys lend me money on this one? Thankfully, I think my bank was like, we can either continue doing that or we can guarantee that he's not going to be able to finish. So let's just, we're far enough with our risk with this guy. Let's just keep going.
yeah.
So they lent me the money and I'm glad he did. So we finished it.
Jeez, that's incredible. So, I mean, that's actually an interesting point to think about. Have you worked with the same bank all along?
No, but so grateful. My dad taught me a lesson, and this is a good lesson for investors. It's a quick 1 minute, but it was life changing. He saw me when he came and visit, and he saw how I'm running around, everything on the computer. And he's like, Johnny, I'm old school. Slow down, connect with people. You don't know what the connection will get you. So that was the same time he came and visited when I bought that fourplex on Charlotte. So that was, I don't know, property number 4 or 5 in Midtown. Fourplex. It was fiveplex. I turned fourplex. The one I said it was a just drug activity happening, and it was really stuffed, so we made it more spacious, 4 units instead. So while I was working and I was standing outside with the GC discussing what we're going to do and our painting it, an older man walks by and he says, oh, I'm an investor too in the neighborhood. And I usually be like, okay, nice meeting you, bye. But I was like, oh, cool, how did you get into it, what did you do? And as I'm talking to him, he's like, here's the best bank you can go to. And he actually said Great American Bank. He said they're local, they're in Midtown, they love businesses nearby, you should talk to them. And he gave me the name of someone at the time that worked there. That got me to start talking to local banks. And for the first time, before that I had a bigger bank that was,
Okay.
but that got me into Great American, and then the other bank, Cornerstone Bank. So those two banks are my go-to banks.
Interesting.
They usually, and it's good to compare between two banks because sometimes
Yeah.
interest rates or rules will vary. But that was an eye-opening experience of how important it is to slow down, but also talk to your local banks because they want to. Like, I truly feel Great American Bank, they have skin in the game because they are in Midtown and they want to
Right.
see Midtown develop because that
Right.
directly affect their client,
Yep.
that directly affect their property. So do that. Talk to your local bank.
Yeah, that's great. So, what do you think is next for you? What's as you look to the future? What's on the table?
Oh man, um, you know, after I don't want to sound like a controversial person, talk about all the drama. I think I think the church, the hard thing with me, I thought and I still truly believe I've honored the building as much as possible and the use of it and the betterment of Broadway and Midtown. And I was shocked by few neighbors, not much, but
Hmm.
very loud neighbors that are very active in the city that were concerned and convinced this is really bad for the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And when I bought we had a tent, a guy that was living in a tent in front of us, and at first I was like, be nice to the houseless, let him be. He's not hurting the property. Then he started fires on top of the roof, and then I start seeing literally young youth coming out looking completely drugged up and seeing needles everywhere. And I was like, enough is enough. But I was really, that's the hardest thing about this business. And that's the crazy part is locals who you would hope they would cheer you on or at least stay neutral, that were fighting against you doing something good because they're convinced. Their concern is, what about cars? Well, it was built that way. So the
Yeah.
only other option is to tear it down.
Yeah. I mean, it was built with no parking,
I
and it,
know.
it had a higher capacity.
And they wanted to
Yeah.
tear I mean, they
Yeah.
would never say we want to tear it down, but what do you want? We want a church.
Right.
Well, it's been sitting for 3 years. Church after church are renting it
Yeah.
and they're walking away.
Right.
So I think that's the hardest thing. And I know that's not the question, what's next for me. I'm recovering from that. We actually have an agreement that they had an agreement with the city. They require us that we're not going to be okay with a hotel until he runs it for 2 years. And it's in March where I have to go in front of the city to show that there has been no problem so that they can sign a longer agreement. And that's really
Hmm.
scary because what if they had one complaint, then, are they going to use that against me to completely shut down something that costs millions, and what are we going to do with it, so I I do have a stronger backbone, but I'm much more calculated now. So the next project I'm looking right now. I did the Rock Hill Mansion. We didn't
Right.
talk about that. and that was really fun. And I love that a family that loves Nelson Atkins live by it,
Mm,
and it's just true honor. Truly, like I can get emotional talking about. I learned the history about the Nelson Atkins, and he bought this house. He built this house for guests coming to visit Kansas City. I would have loved, 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 loved to turn it into a bed and breakfast, because actually this is controversial. I think that's the most honoring thing for this building, because he built it and it was the Kansas City Lodge or the Rock Hill Lodge for guests coming visiting. I'm like, how awesome would that have been for people to come and walk next door to the museum?
right.
But I just made a semi joke to the neighborhood, who were very nice people, by the way. Rock Hill and neighborhood, they were so nice, but they were like, over our dead body, this is gonna be anything except single family. It's like, all right, I'm not gonna push back, but I would say I'm still looking. I'm looking for a historic property. I do have one in front of me, but it's not in Jackson County. So we'll see if I'm gonna expand out of KCMO or if I'm gonna stay and try to find something.
Interesting. All
Yeah.
right. Um, just so I can't have you on here without talking for a minute about your social media work, because you have a fabulous Instagram page, and have thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. Talk about how that came to be, and maybe like what the benefit to
Oh
you
man.
has been
Yeah.
of doing that. Like, why lean into that and spend time doing that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So yeah, I'm naturally journalist, right? Like
Yeah.
social media just came naturally. I love stories. Um and
And by the way, I would say you've put up great videos on there of your projects,
yes.
like little mini stories about the
Yes.
project. So
Yes.
if anybody wants to visualize some of the things we're talking about, especially the church, it's a great way to see
Yes.
that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And actually social media going back, social media is what anyway, social media has been great. It exposes what you're doing in front of people, and that it's a double edged sword, because I've had people that didn't want, they didn't want the wedding venue to be a wedding venue, or they didn't want a short term rental. They used social media against me. Well,
Mm,
he's doing this, or he opened a wall, blah blah blah. But I think the benefit of it is so much greater, because transparency is telling people, here's the story and you get to decide. So I just started doing it because I like storytelling, but I think I actually started pushing when I started getting pushback, because I was like, I want people to see, and then I want the true feedback, not one person that's scaring an entire neighborhood. So honestly, if it wasn't for social media, I would not have been able to finish both the Rock Hill Mansion or in the wedding venue, because I would look, and for every one criticism, there's like 100 encouragement,
hmm,
you know? And some of the feedback, by the way, some criticism is good. Like, I would post the short term rental in Hyde Park that has all painted gray inside of it, because it was, 2015, we all painted everything. And people be like, that's a historic building. Next time you paint a different color. I'm like, that's a really good feedback. I like that, but the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and that's what got me going, saying this needs to be not just a hobby on the side. This needs to be part of the story, because the encouragement I got too is what got me going to be like, for me, quitting on Rock Hill Mansion, it got broken into 6 times. Quitting on the Rock Hill Mansion was not an option, because I was like, I have hundreds of thousands of people that expect it to be done. Do not
mhm,
disappoint them. If I didn't have social media, I would have probably been like, okay, can I sell it now to break even?
mm.
Now I did the electrical, plumbing, someone can come do the finishes. Can I just sell it? So I'm so grateful for it. I encourage people, if you have small business, or even if you have opposition to whatever you do or questions, this is a great way to let the people speak. And I know that once I started doing that, by the way, I started seeing the local neighbors that are trying to fight me on whatever I do really quiet and really supportive. Rock Hill was so supportive, because the neighbors found out about the project. I mean, one thing too also that I learned, go shake hands with the neighbors. I would say I was foolish to take neighbors for granted, thinking, oh, I'll meet them whenever. Right. So I take responsibility there. Shaking hands, making peace with neighbors goes a long way than people hearing there's an investor coming.
Yeah, right.
So I learned that, and I definitely own up to that. So, but I shook the neighbors, went to the neighborhood meeting and introduced myself. But then I know they started looking at the stories and sharing it together. And that helped me a lot because they're like, we like you. We like you as a person because we saw you and we see what you're doing. And even when I get feedback from them, it was so the feedback was so nice. It was not threatening, you know. So if you have a small business or if you're in real estate, tell a story. People are obsessed with transformations. That's why you're going to see a lot of followers with people that do like physical health, like before and after workouts and stuff, like personal
Sure.
trainers,
Yeah.
because we love, and that's why fixer upper shows are really popular.
Yeah.
We love seeing something that is transformed to something better. So when I learned that and I started doing it, that just was life changing. And how that impacted me, to answer that part of the question, we've had a lot of weddings from brides from Oklahoma
Hmm.
that watched the video and said, we'll do a road trip and have a destination wedding in Kansas City. We like Kansas City.
Hmm.
Let's do it anyway. And that brings business to the city, that brings business to our neighborhood, that brings tourism, and that brings business to
Yeah.
me. So storytelling has brought that kind of business, but it also has brought opportunities for people to collaborate. So that one property in front of me that I'm considering came my way because someone on social media reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know this property. Would you be interested in it? I know the owner. I can connect you." So totally worth it. I didn't necessarily make money from braids or anything like that, but just from bookings themselves have been amazing.
Hmm. That's great. I mean, that's great advice, and it's cool to see. I'm sure it helps to have all the sort of the knowledge that people like you and follow you and respond to you positively, and I think that helps in a lot of those. When you have that many followers, do the occasional negative comments, do they still stick with you, or
Yeah,
do
yeah.
you shrug it off now?
Yeah, I shrug it off for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I truly take, I want to say, like, there's a fine line between shrugging things off and there's a fine line between being too out of touch. I don't want to be that investor that's like,
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm looking for my bottom dollar. Then I'm going to hire the best attorney and the neighbors can cry about it. I don't want to be that guy. So I think a lot of it's going to be the tone. Like when someone is nice, like, oh, this is great, but have you considered not painting gray? Like I said earlier, that's a very different tone than we don't want you here, you know.
Yeah. Right.
So I would say I don't read all the comments at this point, especially if it's, and I try not to be controversial for the most
Yeah.
part. Like
Yeah.
with real estate now, I just share the basic points when I'm talking. Even like for the Rockland Mansion, the couple of small items that we did that were not part of the original blueprint of the building, I shared the reason behind them to give people a little bit of understanding, and that really helped. Like, hey, I know the kitchen looks modern, but there was actually no kitchen when this building was built, so I didn't take anything away. Or I know we removed one wall, but this space was so dark and was so unpractical, and we had to open it anyway to help with fixed structure, so we just kept it open after that. So when you share a little bit about the reason, 99.9% of reasonable people will totally applaud you, even if they disagree with you.
Yeah. Sure. Sure. Well, that's a great story, Johnny. I really appreciate you sharing your story with me today.
Thank you.
I think it's inspirational probably for a lot of people, especially anybody starting out, to see because you're still a young guy. And I mean, as I look at it, I'm the old guy now, so I look
I
at it
don't
like,
know
hey,
what
Johnny's still young, man. So he's got a long career ahead of you still.
Thank you. Thank you.
But to get to this point at a young age is really, really quite
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you. And I'm
Um,
excited to see truly what the work you're doing, just to give you credit, just with the city and just with Midtown, I mean, it's kind of the glue between the plaza,
mhm,
Brookside, downtown, Crossroads, and I am so excited. I truly believe in 5 years, 6 years, things take time, but
right.
we're going to see more people moving, bringing business here because of how much time people like you, and I'd like to think I'm part of the picture to
Sure.
me, are coming in and saying, let's bring back the beautiful history of Kansas City.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so, and
Yeah.
that's what we're all working towards. So,
Yeah.
Johnny, if somebody wants to find you, what is the best way you suggest to find you?
Yeah. So Instagram, TikTok, email, it's all the same. So Instagram and TikTok is, and YouTube is Johnny U. So
Hmm.
you're going to do, add Johnny U. YouTube is just youtube.com/Johnny U, JOHNNYYOU. My email is Johnny, JOHNNY, at johnnyu.com. So pretty straightforward.
Easy enough.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for doing this, and I look forward to following more of what you do, and hopefully working together on some stuff as time goes on. So,
Sounds good.
all
I'm
right.
excited.
Take
All right.
care.
Thanks, Kevin.